Ava never considered herself naive. She believed in Daniel because he was the one constant in her life, the calm to her storms. From the moment he proposed at the lakeside pier, ring hidden in a book of poetry, Ava believed they had an unbreakable bond. But when she was 6 months pregnant, something in Daniel's demeanor changed. He started working longer hours, coming home with new cologne scents on his shirt and half-hearted excuses on his lips. The subtle difference in his affection was the first red flag. He used to hold her hand during every car ride. Now, he was glued to his phone. He rarely touched her swollen belly anymore, and the soft kisses on her forehead before bedtime became almost mechanical. Late one night, Ava listened to the silence of their bedroom. The baby kicked, and she pressed a hand to her stomach. In the glow of the moonlight, she spotted Daniel on the balcony, phone clutched tight. His voice was hushed, urgent. Her heart pounded in her ears, a tremor of foreboding that she couldn't ignore. Ava felt the first shards of suspicion prick her mind, but she kept them to herself. She would watch. When Ava found receipts for 2 cappuccinos at a cafe she had never visited, she felt an odd mixture of anger and heartbreak. The next day, rummaging through the laundry, she discovered a restaurant napkin scrawled with a phone number. She turned the slip of paper over in her hands, dread stirring. She knew she could confront Daniel outright, hurl accusations and demand explanations, but something inside her held her back. She wanted to know more before she acted. Hasty judgment had never been her style. Slipping on a warm sweater, Ava left the house, following the address on the back of the napkin. It led her to a cozy bistro with floral centerpieces on each table. The staff recognized Daniel's name when she inquired, their polite smiles betraying a hint of curiosity. Ava thanked them and left. On the drive home, her mind raced. She imagined Daniel there, sitting across from someone new, laughing in ways he no longer did with her. Instead of tears, a cold clarity took hold. She wanted to gather the truth methodically. She needed proof, not just for herself, but for the child she carried. Her child deserved certainty. For now, she wouldn't let Daniel suspect a thing. Days passed, and Ava continued her silent surveillance. She downloaded a secure app on her phone that allowed her to read Daniel's deleted messages, installing a tiny tracking device on his car's undercarriage. Each morning, she woke up early to review location reports and piece together his schedule. One evening, while Daniel showered, she found a text in his phone's backup archives. "I miss you, Claire." The message was time-stamped from that same afternoon. Ava's heart lurched, but her hand remained steady on the phone. Another text. "Tomorrow, same spot, 3 p.m. She locked the phone, slipped it back into place, and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, but a new resolve hardened her features. She couldn't deny what was happening. The swirl of betrayal, like a dull ache in her chest, refused to go away. The next day, while Daniel believed she was at a prenatal appointment, she drove to that same spot he had mentioned. Parking inconspicuously, she watched from a distance as Daniel embraced a woman with chestnut hair. Although she was too far to hear, she could see his smile, one he no longer shared with her. It was the proof she needed. Despite the mounting evidence, Ava pretended nothing was amiss. She continued cooking Daniel's favorite meals, laughing at half-hearted jokes, and lying awake with him at night. Through it all, she quietly gathered every scrap of information she could. When Daniel mentioned he had another late meeting one Wednesday, Ava calmly asked if he wanted dinner reheated afterward. He smiled with relief, perhaps believing he had fooled her. Little did he know that Ava had already mapped out his entire route, down to the very minute. He left at 7 p.m., and she trailed him from a few cars behind. He parked at an upscale lounge in the heart of the city. Ava watched as Claire arrived in a sleek black dress, her arm slipping confidently around Daniel's waist. They disappeared inside, unaware of Ava's vigilant gaze from across the street. Back at home, she waited for Daniel's return, setting the table with quiet meticulousness. When he walked in smelling of whiskey and perfume, she greeted him with a gentle smile. He offered a weak explanation about meeting delays, and she simply nodded, placing a plate of reheated pasta before him. She gave no sign of her knowledge, but her heart pulsed with growing determination. Late at night, Ava sat on the couch, her hand resting on her rounded belly. The little one stirred, delivering soft kicks that reminded her of the stakes at hand. It wasn't just about her pride anymore. She wanted to ensure a stable future for the child, free from Daniel's lies and duplicity. Yet, she couldn't deny the painful sting of betrayal. She once believed Daniel was her protector, her partner through every high and low. Now she questioned if anything about their relationship had been genuine. These thoughts weighed heavily on her, pressing like a stone in her chest. She fought off waves of despair, choosing instead to channel her heartache into resolve. The unborn child represented innocence, and Ava refused to let Daniel's betrayal tarnish that purity. As she looked around their living room, the photos on the mantel, the half-finished nursery, she felt an odd sense of calm. Some would scream, others would rage. Ava chose silence. In that quiet determination, she discovered power. If Daniel thought she was weak, that she would break, he was mistaken. What he couldn't see was that she was already planning a meticulous path forward, one that would ensure her and her child's security. In the following weeks, Ava started making small strategic changes. She switched banks, opened a new account in her name only, and transferred small sums of money to avoid drawing attention. She consulted a discreet financial advisor and began mapping out how to separate their assets without Daniel's suspicion. Whenever he left the house to see Claire, Ava busied herself with research. She read about legal grounds for divorce, child custody laws, and the importance of documented proof. Every article she devoured fueled her conviction. She also began planting little seeds of doubt in Daniel's mind, feigning forgetfulness or showing disinterest in his whereabouts. Whenever he returned home late, she would ask just enough questions to seem curious, but not accusatory. Her softness lulled him into complacency. Behind that gentle facade, however, Ava orchestrated a quiet symphony of chess-like moves. If Daniel suspected anything at all, he showed no sign. He joked about how pregnancy made women more emotional, and Ava would force a tight-lipped smile, letting the comment slide. All the while, she gathered fresh ammunition, forging a hidden arsenal of bank statements, messages, and photographs. She was done waiting to be rescued. It was time she rescued herself. Ava knew she needed an ally. She reached out to the one person she trusted wholeheartedly, her old college friend Naomi. Over coffee at a serene cafe downtown, Ava finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She recounted the text messages, the secret meetings, and the heartbreak of discovering Daniel's affair while pregnant. Naomi's eyes brimmed with anger and compassion. "You need to protect yourself," she said firmly, leaning forward. "But you're not in this alone." Ava exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. For so long, she'd carried the burden in silence, determined to stand strong. Now, sharing her pain with Naomi felt like shedding a layer of isolation. Naomi offered contacts: a reputable divorce lawyer who specialized in high-stakes cases, a counselor experienced in supporting women through marital betrayal. Ava took down every detail, her fingers trembling slightly as she tapped the information into her phone. Leaving the cafe, she felt the smallest flicker of hope. Naomi's support rekindled her drive. Ava had been operating alone, but now she had a trusted ally, and with a child on the way, every additional bit of help was a lifeline. While Ava worked in secret, Daniel spun his own web of deceit. She noticed he became more confident, almost cocky, as though convinced he could juggle two lives indefinitely. He'd come home humming, tucking his phone away with a smug grin. He told Ava stories about team-building exercises, corporate dinners that ran late, and out-of-town conferences. Sometimes, Claire would post carefully cropped photos on social media, a glimpse of Daniel's watch, a corner of his jacket, or the reflection of his profile in a hotel window. Ava found these snapshots chilling. They were half taunts, half proof. Yet, the more Daniel lied, the more Ava observed. She kept meticulous records of every phone conversation, every suspicious credit card charge. Her silence allowed him to feel invincible, which only made him more reckless. The strangest part was the charade he maintained at home. He still placed a gentle hand on her belly from time to time, asking about the baby's health. He still kissed her cheek before work. The contrast between his supposed tenderness and his ongoing betrayal stoked Ava's indignation. She realized his confidence would be his downfall. He was building his own trap, weaving threads of deceit so tangled he wouldn't see her final move coming. Naomi's recommended lawyer, Anthony Grant, was a sharp-eyed professional who specialized in high-conflict divorces. He welcomed Ava into his office one morning with a warm handshake and a determined nod. His office walls were lined with legal certificates and framed photographs of him with satisfied clients. Ava explained her situation in measured tones: Daniel's affair, her pregnancy, and her plan to protect herself and the child. She laid out copies of messages, a log of suspicious transactions, and a USB drive containing pictures and tracking data. Grant raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You've done a lot of legwork already. This is more evidence than most clients gather." Ava nodded. "I want to be thorough. I can't afford to make a mistake." He explained the potential avenues: filing for divorce on grounds of adultery, negotiating spousal support, ensuring Daniel's responsibilities for the baby's future. When he finished, Ava felt a mix of dread and relief. The legal route was daunting, but at least she had clarity. Leaving the office, she felt the first true shift toward action. Silent observation would soon evolve into concrete steps, but she wouldn't strike until she had Daniel exactly where she wanted him. Even with her careful planning, Ava experienced moments of hesitation. She'd walk past old photos of her and Daniel, smiling by the ocean, dancing at a friend's wedding, and feel an ache. Was she truly prepared to dismantle everything they had built? Each time doubt surfaced, she reminded herself of the baby, their baby. She recalled how Daniel held Claire's hand outside that lounge, how he lied to her face night after night. She remembered the heartbreak of discovering the text messages. Sometimes her hormones made it worse. She'd tear up at the simplest things: a sweet commercial, a children's book in the nursery. But these emotional waves also fueled her resolve. She couldn't allow Daniel to keep this secret life indefinitely, especially once the baby arrived. She tried to confront him indirectly, asking about his extra hours or hinting she felt neglected, but he brushed her off with that familiar arrogance. He even promised a baby moon after the next promotion, as if that could fix the deep crack he'd caused. In those fleeting, vulnerable moments, Ava found renewed purpose. Betrayal had scarred her heart, but it also ignited a fire that refused to be extinguished. Late one evening, as Daniel slept, Ava scrolled through social media profiles. She finally tracked down Claire's public account, full of staged selfies, motivational quotes, and cryptic references to a new love. Ava's chest tightened when she spotted a playful photo: Claire at a fancy restaurant, clearly the same one Daniel frequented. Scrolling further, Ava discovered more revealing posts. Claire boasted about expensive gifts and secret rendezvous without naming names, but the timing matched too closely to be coincidence. Ava recognized the designer purse from their joint credit card statement. Ava studied Claire's face in the photos, a bright smile, eyes alight with ambition. She wondered if Claire felt any remorse for carrying on with a married man whose wife was pregnant. From the looks of it, guilt wasn't part of Claire's repertoire. A sudden kick from the baby startled Ava. She closed the app, her heart pounding. It was surreal to think this stranger was not only intruding on her marriage, but also threatening the future of her child. Yet, if Claire was part of the problem, she could also be the key. Ava made a silent vow: Claire's very presence would eventually become Daniel's undoing. Ava decided the time had come to meet Claire face to face. She discovered from Claire's social media that she often worked out at a particular gym on Thursday evenings. Ava waited patiently outside in her car, scanning each person exiting until she recognized Claire's distinct chestnut hair. She approached her in the parking lot, heart pounding but composure intact. "Claire?" she said softly, forcing a warm smile. Claire froze, uncertain. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" Claire's tone was guarded. Ava introduced herself politely, leaving out her identity as Daniel's wife. She told a small white lie about being new to the neighborhood and wanting gym recommendations. Claire relaxed, momentarily disarmed by Ava's seemingly harmless demeanor. They chatted for a few minutes, discussing treadmill brands and favorite workout classes. Claire suggested a trainer she swore by, even offering to set up a free trial. Ava feigned gratitude, storing every detail in her mind. As they parted ways, Claire had no idea she'd just met her lover's pregnant wife. Ava felt her pulse race. She'd studied Claire's body language, her voice, her eyes. Soon, it would be time to use Claire's own confidence against her. Over the next few weeks, Ava executed a subtle strategy to chip away at Claire's trust in Daniel. She created a fake social media account, an anonymous user with a profile picture of a city skyline. Then she began sending Claire indirect messages, hinting that Daniel wasn't as single or as devoted as he claimed. At first, the messages were vague, suggesting that Claire's boyfriend might have another woman on the side. Claire seemed dismissive. She posted a cryptic status about jealous people trying to meddle in her happiness. Undeterred, Ava escalated her tactics. She composed messages referencing specific restaurants and times Daniel had been seen with someone else. Claire's online responses grew more agitated, her posts less smug. It was clear the seeds of doubt were sprouting. Behind the scenes, Ava continued to track Daniel's every movement. She knew Claire confronted him one evening because Daniel came home in a foul mood, muttering about crazy rumors. Ava simply watched from the kitchen as he tossed his phone aside in frustration. That night, as he sank into a restless sleep, Ava felt the baby stir inside her. She whispered a quiet apology to the life she carried. She wished she hadn't brought them into this mess. But she had to set things right for both of them. Daniel prided himself on his professional reputation, an ambitious executive climbing the corporate ladder. Ava knew that a well-timed scandal could derail all of that. She had discovered through his emails that his company had strict policies regarding workplace affairs. If superiors found out, it could compromise his position. She composed an anonymous letter detailing unethical conduct and attached select photos of Daniel and Claire at work-sponsored events. Photos that revealed more intimacy than mere colleagues should display. She then mailed it to the company's HR department. Within a week, Daniel's tension at home was palpable. He spent hours on the phone, hushed and frantic. He snapped at Ava for small things, like forgetting to buy his favorite cereal. Each time she responded with feigned innocence. One evening, he mentioned an unwarranted HR investigation, blaming it on office politics. Ava pretended surprise, even offering comforting words about how he'd surely be vindicated. Inwardly, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The carefully orchestrated cracks were beginning to show. Daniel's double life no longer glided seamlessly. Ava wasn't sure how far the HR probe would go, but the mere possibility of consequences weighed on him, another step toward his downfall. Daniel cornered Ava one night in the kitchen, tension carved into the lines of his face. "Things at work are getting complicated," he began, voice low. "There's an investigation. Some allegations." Ava turned from the sink, her expression carefully arranged to appear concerned yet not panicked. "What kind of allegations?" He hesitated, struggling to form a lie. "They think I'm fraternizing inappropriately. Someone's out to get me." Ava folded a dish towel, placing it neatly on the counter. "But you've always been professional, haven't you? Nobody could actually prove anything." Daniel's eyes flickered, and Ava felt a twist of satisfaction. "Of course," he said, a nervous edge creeping into his voice. "But these rumors can stick if the wrong people believe them." For a moment, Ava wondered if he saw the steely glint in her eyes, if he sensed the danger lurking beneath her words. But he just exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. She pretended to soothe him, resting a comforting hand on his shoulder. His muscles were taut, as if bracing for an unseen blow. Ava's heartbeat thrummed. The shadows of her plan were inching closer. Claire was growing increasingly restless. In her public posts, she no longer flaunted her supposed romance. Instead, she shared moody quotes about trust and deception. Ava noticed a subtle withdrawal, fewer photos, fewer grandiose statements. Late one afternoon, Claire sent a DM to the anonymous account Ava had created. "Who are you?" the message read. "Stop messing with my life." Ava stared at the screen, contemplating her next move. She typed back carefully, "I'm someone who believes you deserve the truth. Ask Daniel about his pregnant wife." The response was immediate. "He told me he was separated. Lying jerk." Claire's shock and fury were evident, yet Ava felt no sympathy. The mistress had chosen to be with a married man. It wasn't entirely her fault. Daniel had lied, after all, but she bore some responsibility. In the following days, rumors circulated at Daniel's workplace that Claire was considering a transfer. The tension around them was rising, and Ava sensed the final act was drawing closer. She could almost taste the justice in the air, an electric hum that made her heart pound faster. Daniel's once orderly life now unraveled on multiple fronts. HR summoned him for a second round of questioning. Claire avoided him at work, and rumors spread that she was contemplating legal action against the company for a hostile environment. Daniel's boss, once an ally, had grown distant. At home, he was equally on edge. He snapped at Ava over trivial matters, accused her of not being supportive enough, and even criticized the way she organized the baby's nursery. The irony of his complaints didn't escape her. One Friday night, Daniel stormed in after a stressful day, throwing his jacket on the couch. Without warning, he lashed out. "Why aren't you doing anything to help? I'm fighting for my job." Ava stood by the baby crib, gently running her hand along its edge. She took a measured breath, reminding herself to maintain composure. "I didn't realize you needed my help," she said softly, her eyes reflecting a fragile calm. He raked his hand through his hair, muttering about never being understood. Ava turned away, hiding the small, sardonic smile that curled at the corner of her lips. His desperation was growing, a sure sign that her plan was working. Ava scheduled another meeting with Anthony Grant, her divorce attorney. She presented updated evidence, time-stamped photos of Daniel with Claire, more explicit text conversations, and records of suspicious financial transactions that indicated Daniel might be funneling money into a hidden account. Grant surveyed the evidence and nodded. "This is more than enough to secure a favorable outcome," he said. "We can file for divorce citing adultery and request full custody, pending his willingness to uphold parental obligations. Given his conduct, the court will likely favor you." Ava felt a knot of tension uncoil in her chest. "I want to ensure the baby is protected, no matter what happens next." Grant reassured her they'd proceed with the utmost care. He handed her a folder containing official divorce papers along with instructions. "When you're ready, sign these. I'll handle the rest." Leaving the office, Ava paused in the corridor, her hand subconsciously resting on her belly. She stared at the folder, realizing this step marked the end of her marriage. Grief and determination swirled inside her, but she reminded herself of Daniel's betrayal. The pain was real, but so was her silent need for justice. Ava waited for the precise moment to set the final phase in motion. She chose a day when Daniel had a critical meeting with the company's board of directors, a day he desperately needed to appear composed. That morning, she slipped a copy of the divorce papers into his briefcase, along with a note that read, "You made your choice. Now face the consequences." She imagined his face when he discovered them, perhaps in front of the entire board, his confidence splintering under the weight of reality. She also sent an email, anonymously of course, to Claire, attaching evidence of Daniel's hidden accounts and newly filed divorce. She ended it with a simple line, "He's all yours now, if you still want him." Then she left the house. She went to Naomi's place, where she'd planned to stay for a few days. She sat in the guest room, phone resting on the bedside table, waiting. Eventually, the frantic calls started coming in. Daniel's number flashed on the screen again and again. Ava let it ring. By the evening, texts from Claire appeared, their tone a mix of anger and betrayal. Ava saw them but didn't reply. Let them both stew in their shared misery. Daniel pounded on Naomi's door that night, voice trembling with rage. Ava had anticipated this. Naomi opened the door but blocked his path. "She doesn't owe you anything," Naomi said, crossing her arms. Daniel shoved past, desperation etched into every line of his face. Ava stood in the living room, arms wrapped around her belly, her expression unwavering. "You can't run from me," he spat, eyes wild. Ava breathed in. She felt the baby move, as if sensing the tension. "I'm not running," she said quietly. "I'm just done playing your games." He brandished the divorce papers with a shaking hand. "You humiliated me at work? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ava stared at him, her gaze cold. "I know exactly what I've done. It's called self-preservation." Naomi hovered protectively, ready to call the police if needed. Daniel roared accusations, calling her vindictive, accusing her of masterminding his professional downfall. Ava simply stood there, absorbing his fury like a stone wall. When his rant finally subsided, she said only one sentence, "You betrayed our marriage, our child. This is the consequence." Daniel's outburst left him trembling, sweat beading on his forehead. Naomi cautiously edged closer, phone in hand, but Ava shook her head. She wanted to see this through. He collapsed into a chair, staring at the divorce papers with a wild, desperate look. "I never wanted this," he muttered. "We could have fixed things. Why are you being so ruthless?" Ava felt a pang in her chest but refused to let it soften her resolve. "I gave you so many chances to come clean, to be honest. You chose to lie. You chose Claire. You chose to watch me suffer in silence." Daniel swallowed hard. "Claire was... I don't even know what it was. A mistake, maybe." He paused, glancing at her belly. "I still want to be a father. Don't shut me out." Ava's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You made that choice the moment you turned your back on us." She handed him a separate document, a list of conditions for supervised visitation after the baby's birth, along with expected financial support. "Sign it," she said softly, "or you'll never see our child." He looked up, recognizing the final blow. She held all the power now. Claire's life also crumbled. The company's HR department, having received multiple complaints, placed both her and Daniel under review. Coworkers whispered about the scandal, and some even took sides. Claire found herself increasingly isolated, an object of hushed gossip and disapproval. When Claire discovered that Daniel actually had a pregnant wife, not a separated ex, her shock turned to bitter anger. She confronted him outside the office one afternoon, demanding to know why he lied. He offered feeble excuses about a loveless marriage and impending separation, but Claire saw through his self-serving explanations. She realized too late that she had been played. The lavish gifts, the secret getaways, all illusions masking the truth. And now she risked losing her job and reputation for a man who was already losing everything. Ava's anonymous messages still lingered in Claire's inbox, each one a painful reminder. She tried to block the account, but the damage was done. She knew Ava had orchestrated much of this downfall, and she hated Ava for it. But she also knew she'd walked willingly into the trap. In the end, Claire was left stranded, her future uncertain. Her fling turned to poison. In the weeks that followed, Daniel reluctantly signed Ava's conditions under the advice of his own lawyer. His professional reputation was in tatters. His once promising career stalled. The board of directors had placed him on indefinite suspension. Claire, likewise, faced potential job loss, leaving them both in precarious positions. Ava watched the legal process unfold from Naomi's spare room. Her growing belly reminded her daily of the life she needed to protect. Each new email from Anthony Grant carried updates. Daniel's acceptance of financial obligations, the official divorce filing, potential hearing dates. The gravity of it all weighed heavily on Ava, but also granted her a strange sense of peace. She had faced her darkest fears, being alone, being betrayed, and emerged stronger. One morning, Naomi brought Ava a cup of herbal tea. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Ava nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Oddly, yes. I'm sad for what I lost, but I'm proud of what I'm protecting." She rested a hand on her stomach. Naomi squeezed her shoulder. "You deserve a fresh start. No more secrets. No more lies." Ava gazed at the sunrise through the window, allowing a quiet smile to form. The day finally came, when Ava stood in a courtroom, her swollen belly a testament to the new life she carried. Daniel sat across from her, looking hollow and defeated. The judge reviewed the divorce settlement and custody terms. In a matter of minutes, their marriage was pronounced over. Daniel tried to catch Ava's eye, but she refused to meet his gaze. The final papers bore signatures that sealed their fates. Claire was nowhere in sight. Her involvement had only fueled the legal proceedings from the shadows. Leaving the courthouse, Ava felt an odd mixture of relief and sorrow. Despite the bitterness, there was a time when she had truly loved Daniel. Memories of their early romance tugged at her heart, but she pushed them aside. He had chosen to break those vows, betray her trust. She exhaled, stepping into the sunlight. Anthony Grant shook her hand, congratulating her on her courage. She offered him a small smile, then headed to Naomi's car. As they drove away, Ava gazed out the window at the city streets, each passing block a reminder of the new path she was on. There were no illusions left, only the clarity of a future she would shape on her own terms. In the weeks following the divorce, Ava settled into a new apartment, modest, safe, and filled with the promise of fresh beginnings. She furnished the nursery with soft colors and simple decorations, a sanctuary for the baby she would soon welcome into the world. Daniel's life, by contrast, was in ruins. He reached out occasionally, sending remorseful texts that Ava deleted without response. Claire had vanished from his world, leaving him to face the consequences alone. Rumors circulated that he might lose his position at the company altogether, victim to the scandal he had helped create. One evening, as Ava gently folded tiny clothes and placed them in a dresser, she felt the baby kick, stronger now, full of life. A wave of gratitude washed over her. She had survived the betrayal, safeguarded her dignity, and ensured the stability of her child's future. Ava felt no need for dramatic last words or elaborate revenge schemes beyond what she had already orchestrated. Silence had been her greatest weapon, letting Daniel's own lies snare him. In the end, he was left with nothing but regret. And as for Ava, she had everything she needed: freedom, self-respect, and the unwavering promise of a brighter tomorrow.